Welcome, community, to another Educational Thursdays. I'm not sure if that was some Wi-Fi issues or what, but thank you for spending your evening with us. Today is May 11th. It's Thursday. We have our Educational Thursday, and oh boy, do we have a treat for you. As you know, I'm Khalees Hollins, co-host with Both Sides of the Conversation, and so excited to have Ayo White, our other co-host. Ayo, please say something to the community.
Good evening, community. We have a great show for you this evening. A subject that I hold dear and near to my heart, seeing that, growing up in San Francisco, seeing all of the traumatic and uprooting of gun violence and how it's had such a horrible impact on our communities. So tonight is going to be a great informal show. You're going to get educated, you're going to get some light shined on some things, and hopefully you guys, put some good comments in the chat, get your questions answered, and we're going to have a great show tonight.
Absolutely. If you have not already followed us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, go ahead and subscribe. Like and follow us on both sides of the conversation because we are changing the narrative. We have YouTube, and make sure that you ring that bell so that it will alert you whenever we go live with our shows. So at this moment, we will be getting right into our news. Ayo, if you can go ahead and bring up the news.
Okay, so today we have the CDC study points to positive signs in youth mental health. Snapshot of the state adolescent mental health offers encouraging signs conditions may be improving, even as plenty of concerns remain. The average number of weekly visits to an emergency department among adolescents ages 12 to 17 for mental health conditions overall decreased by 11%. Visits for anxiety disorder decreased by 12%, for example, while those depressions fell by 18%. Adolescent emergencies visits for suicide-related behaviors encompassing suicidal self-harm and suspected suicide attempts also decreased by 12%, while visits tied to suspected suicide attempts specifically fell by 17%. That's awesome. Those are awesome numbers. Visits involving drug overdose overall dropped by 10%, though visits of opioid-involved overdoses rose by 27%. Little known laws allows Alameda landlords to charge tenants for construction. Tenants are furious. I would be too. Renters at Alameda South Shore apartment complex are in an uproar over a potential rent increase due to little known law that allows landlords to pass on 100% of the cost of improvements to their tenants. South Shore Apartments at 451 unit complex owned by Texas-based company filed in October of 22 with Alameda city officials to recoup over $24.4 million from tenants. Over a 15-year period from construction costs, the total cost passed to the tenants would have been increased $300 a month. San Jose Police Department finds explosives, bomb-making materials in San Jose business and home. A man in San Jose has been arrested after allegedly possessing equipment to produce bombs, according to the police. Business and home, they found 100 pounds worth of precarious explosives making materials, assembly equipment, complicated explosives, meaning that they were in there trying to put things together themselves, which is a hazard for everybody in their community. Tensions rise. Oakland teachers move picket line to district office under construction. Today, Oakland teachers on strike took their picket line to the Cole campus on Union Street, which is slated for a 2-story OUSD administrative office building. Things got a bit tense when contractors drove to the site to start work, driving his SUV, close to the picketing teachers and pushing them closer to the locked construction site fence. The district, more than 30,000 students have not been in class since last Thursday. The school year is scheduled to end May 25th.
Wow, Ayo, thank you very much for talking about that news. It's just awful that they can't come to an agreement to get those babies back in class. It's getting close to the end of the school year and the kids need to be educated, right?
Yeah,
So
they
now,
need to finish out strong.
absolutely. And so now we're going to go ahead and get into our events around the Bay Area. The Salvation Army, the Way Out program, they're offering job training, housing, and community support. All of our links will be below. Anti-Bully Hero Initiative presents A Good Day musical. Writer and director Dre Dudley. May 13th, doors open at 4 p.m. at the Bayview Opera House. Ruth Williams Memorial Theater at 4705 3rd Street in San Francisco. Manny's presents Restoring the City, a conversation with the San Francisco African American Reparations Advisory Committee. This is happening on May 16th at 5:30 p.m. at 3092 16th Street in San Francisco. Latino Task Force City College of San Francisco is having a career fair. This is happening May 16th, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., 1125 Valencia Street in San Francisco. Fierce Love and Joy is hosting panel sessions, creating safe space for our young people. Lunch will be provided. This is on May 23rd, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the San Francisco Jazz, 201 Franklin Street in San Francisco. Lonnie Green's Frisco Game Night, dominoes, spades, chess, blackjack, poker, dice. Sounds like a lot of fun. This has happened for strutting gamers and family players. May 26th, June 30th, 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. Bayview Opera House at 4705 3rd Street in San Francisco. Bayview YMCA Family Resource Center is having a healing retreat days. May 27th is for grief and loss. June 24th is for domestic trauma and recovery. More information is at that website below. Legend, the Fillmore Slim Story stage play and concert. Written and directed by Farah Dews. May 27th, the doors open at 5:30 p.m. It's a free event community at the Bayview Opera House. Ruth Williams Memorial Theater at 4705 3rd Street in San Francisco. Carnival San Francisco is celebrating 45 years of music and movement. 2-day festival, May 27th and May 28th. The Grand Parade is on the 28th. More information is at the website below. Come learn with the Only Loud Squad how to print t-shirts, how to use a Cricut cutter, create decals, and you'll get a free t-shirt at the end of the session. This is happening May 31st at 3:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. at 1301 Evans Avenue in San Francisco. It's at the Learning Center through the back door. Black Female Project is hosting an 8-week of self-discovery program with Dr. Walters. This is every Wednesday, now through May 31st, 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. It's a free event. Go to the website below. World Premiere, 26 Ways of Looking at a Black Man. This is happening June 2nd at 7 p.m. Go to Eventbrite, the website below. Mr. and Miss Juneteenth Pageant, ages 5 years old to 17 years of age, June 2nd at 6 p.m. This is at the Southeast Community Center, 1550 Evans Avenue in San Francisco. To register your child, go to that email below. Red Carpet Movie Premiere and Award Ceremony, Hood Pretty, June 3rd at 6:45 p.m. at the Bayview Opera House, Ruth Williams Memorial Theater, 4705 3rd Street in San Francisco. The tickets is at the website below. Join Dr. Walters' Restorative Retreat. This is on June 3rd, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at 2161 San Pablo Avenue in Pinole. San Francisco Juneteenth. Yes, the grand event. San Francisco Juneteenth. June 10th is on the Waterfront Parade. June 16th is the City Hall Kickoff and Black Wall Street Gala. June 17th is the Fillmore Festival. June 18th is the Bayview Festival. For more information, go to that website below. Join us for the 25th anniversary Family Day in honor of Dr. Ruth Jackson and family. Fun, food, cars, trophies, and prizes, June 11th, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. at the Hearst Playground in Sunnydale. Magic Zone has a 2023 summer program, June 12th to August 4th. This is 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. at 1050 McAllister Street. More information at that link below. The first San Francisco Black Wall Street Juneteenth Gala. Yes, you heard it, June 16th. Cut the Check is the theme, a black and gold formal affair. Special guests will be there. The location will be determined soon, so there's more to come. The third annual crowning ceremony. King and Queen, I Know Who I Am. Save the dates. June 24th, July 5th, July 19th. It's a 3-series workshop on self-transformation and crowning ceremony. Information is at that website below. Youth First is having an OMI Family Day. It's having a bounce house, 360 machine, bull riding, food, raffles, bookmobile, Sugar Bears appearance.
Youth First OMI Family Day at 360 Machine Bull Riding, food, raffles, bookmobile, Sugar Bears appearance. I'm just going to pick it up where she left off because I think we lost her, you guys. We have the citykidscreator.com, save the date, free creative outlets, art, music, and fashion, July 14th, 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. at the 200 block of Jones Street. More information coming. Magic Backpack Giveaways, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Ella Hill Hutch, 1050 McAllister Street in San Francisco. Youth First and Invest Black Comedy and Award Show, August 11th at 7 p.m. Doors open at 6 p.m. at Brotherhood Masonic Center, 855 Brotherhood Way, San Francisco. $50 food included at eventbrite.com. Magic Backpack Giveaways, Be Magic, August 12th, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Now Hunters Point, 155 Jennings Street in San Francisco. San Francisco HRC regular bi-monthly commission meeting, second and fourth Thursdays at 5 p.m. San Francisco City Hall in room 416. African American Reparations Advisory Committee, monthly meetings virtually at 5:30 p.m. every second Monday. Scholarships and jobs. Mo Green is having a job fair. Full-time and part-time positions available. Professional headshots available. Bring your resume. This will be May 13th, 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. at 1276 Market Street. Dusty's Fishing Well City EMT San Francisco is hiring a part-time case manager. Applications May 4th through May 26th, $25 to $30 an hour. City Build Academy provides comprehensive pre-apprenticeship and construction administration training to San Francisco residents. Learn and build. Mission Hiring Hall, San Francisco Mayor's Office of Economic Workforce Development and City College of San Francisco are looking for candidates. Security guard card training, enrollment requirements. Apply at https Mission Hiring Hall. San Francisco Human Services Agency is hiring various positions. Cal Youth Commission is hiring core organizers, Bay Area, South Bay, North Bay, Northern Cal, Century Valley, Los Angeles. Rising Sun Center for Opportunity is hiring for several positions in the Bay Area and Stockton. Wu Yi Children's Services is hiring teachers, assistants, associates, teachers, lead teachers. Ready to be a hairstylist? ICY Beauty Academy has 10 spots open. San Francisco resident ages 18 to 24 accepting applications. AM Crawford Strategic Philanthropy Advisory is hiring lead consultants, San Francisco office of Gainesville, Florida office. JVS is offering dental assistant training. Apps are now open for 11-week program. Give back to the community. Both sides of the conversation needs volunteers. Youth team marketing, production, finance, fundraising, bookkeeping, IT development director. Promote your business or nonprofit or your community impact or hidden gems. For our Hidden Gem show, which airs on Tuesdays, we'd love for you to come out for Educational Thursday, be a panelist on Sunday's conversations, and keep up with both sides of the conversation. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, everything.
Boy, community, the devil is busy. I tell you, I got kicked all the way off the computer. Ayo, thank you so much for holding it down. The bishop is not here, and we can tell something's definitely happening around here. I am so sorry, community, but we have a treat. I promise we're going to make up for it, because I tell you this presentation tonight is very, very, very dear. It's important, and it hits home for us. But first, both sides of the conversation is definitely in search of volunteers. Our work is inspiring. So this Sunday, it is Mother's Day. We're not having a show. Tuesday is our next show, May 16th at 7 p.m., our Hidden Gem segment. So our educational topic tonight, I tell you, this gentleman from the Mayor's Office of Gun Violence Prevention, Social Media, City of New Orleans, Patrick Young. He serves as a director for the Mayor's Office of Gun Violence. This program, I tell you, it's the backbone of the city's effort to work with New Orleanians to create peace and prevent gun violence. Prior to working with the mayor, Patrick served the New Orleans Business Alliance as a director of training, managing the Strive Work Readiness Program that operated throughout 4 opportunity centers in the city of New Orleans, helping employ over 890 formerly incarcerated persons in less than 3 years. He is the founder and executive director of Sharp Men, a nonprofit that helps men overcome the barriers to employment, and was selected as a W.K. Kellogg Foundation Fellow for his proven leadership and dedication to making the city of New Orleans one of the best cities in the world. I tell you, we have a treat, and we are going to bring Mr. Young up. Patrick, please say something to the community and let us know what you're about before we go down and turn it over to you.
We got to say, who that? Who that?
Who that?
Who that? That's right. Represent the Saints always. How y'all doing tonight?
We're doing well.
Oh, man. So glad to be here. Thank you for having me. I was excited when I heard those announcements. I saw the domino and spades game. I was, we get down here. So I was excited to see that. So thank you. And also shout out, happy Mother's Day to all the people watching. I know you're not going to have a show this Sunday. So happy Mother's Day in advance to everybody that's watching.
All right. So today we're going to be talking about gun violence and prevention. So we'll go ahead and leave it to you, Patrick, and let you go ahead and elaborate on your presentation for today.
Okay. So if we talk about anything right now, the first thing I want to start off by saying is that gun violence is the leading cause of death for youth in America. So anyone under 18 years of age is likely to die by gun violence in America. And that's a tragic statistic that we shouldn't even have to talk about. But it's the reality that we deal with. We watch the news, we see the murder rate going up, car break-ins, we watch television, see the shows, the music, and even the games that are being played. And so it has some real collateral consequences. New Orleans has been in the top 5 murder capital for the last 40 years. And, it's finally in this year, with our mayor and her leadership, she decided to do something about it by creating the first Office of Gun Violence Prevention here in the city of New Orleans. And I'm honored to be the person that she tapped to lead it. And so I'm just excited about the work that we're doing to transform our community and to stop and prevent shootings and killings in the city of New Orleans. But the thing I want to talk about tonight is a little different because when we talk about gun violence prevention, we typically focus on a neighborhood, and we may look at an area or a hotspot, and we may want to go to that physical location. But with the work I'm doing recently, we have to look at the digital space and the digital community and how it impacts our physical community. So a lot of work and a lot of the stuff that I'll talk about tonight is that as we are online now, there's conversations that happen and interactions that happen in media and in online activities that is executed offline. 11 of the last 12 mass shootings in this country were actually articulated or had some type of messaging prior to the execution of it offline. And so we have to start looking at that to find ways that we can identify before it happens, intervene, and then prevent this type of social media violence from spreading in the community. But we also have to acknowledge that the metaverse is real and that the murders that happen from the metaverse are real as well. And so we're going to start with the PowerPoint. We just basically go through the next slide, please. And how we use community violence as an intervention tool, social media observations. It starts off by explaining 2018, we had an executive order by the mayor to create this gun violence reduction task force to try to look at how we can really identify ways to stop the shootings and killings in New Orleans. 2019, there was a generational gun violence reduction plan that was created. And then 2021, we launched this Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Our core functions are simply to identify, use intelligence, get community support. But ideally, we want to change the behaviors that can lead to prevention of even having violence in our city. Next slide, please. Social media violence, though, is a little different. In those 4 key areas is how do you identify profiles, activity, and posts, using that intelligence and the information, that data that you gather. How can you rally around a digital community? And then again, how can you change those behaviors and get prevention? The next slide, please. So what we identify when we're looking at social media intervention, if somebody's curious of doing gun violence prevention in this capacity, it doesn't have to just come from office. It can be a community organization. It could just be grassroots organizations that want to campaign and just keep the peace in their community. But you see, again, what you look at in your neighborhood and what you look at online, sometimes it's totally different. We believe that gun violence spreads like a disease. And in the same way that you would identify someone with COVID and looking at the people that they came in closest contact with, the same thing when you promote violence online. There's a profile description, basic demographic, look at the followers, look at the following account, how many posts, the frequency of what they're saying. That's like an interaction. How many people are they coming in contact with? And then location. If you can identify those geotags or those locations where people are commonly giving up their media, giving up their interactions, you can identify. Again, this is not for to arrest or to prosecute, but this is all about prevention. If you can step in and say, hey, posing for the gram with a gun, that isn't the way to go, or let me show you a better opportunity. If you need the attention, let me get you a job where you can, speak and be in customer service, use your skills to be creative, not destructive. Next slide, please. When we think about trauma, a lot of times, what we like to promote, and I like to promote is as a quadrant of trauma that we experience. So as an individual, you have these four layers: individual, family, social, and environment. So when someone's saying they've been through a traumatic experience, or they're dealing with something, or they have these triggers, sometimes when you say it, people only look at it from one dimension. But actually, we look at it as a quad. And it's like, as an individual, who I am, my race, my sexuality, my character traits, my talents, my attitude, my beliefs about myself is like who I am, Patrick. I may have my own feelings and belief about myself. But then I'm saying I look at my family, my parents, my siblings, my living conditions, my relatives, if there's legal supervision, my history and my genealogy, if there are diseases in the family. So as an individual, I'm already ingrained with this family. And then I have my social, which is my media, my school, my friends, my music, my network, my affiliations. And then all of that carries to your environment, city, neighborhood, parish, state. So if you look at Patrick, who he is, and then his family, I didn't grow up with a father. My mother raised 4 boys by herself, right? Social media, I went to a school uptown, but I lived in the East, so there was always conflict coming and going. And then again, I'm from New Orleans, and we live with hurricanes. And so when somebody's saying that they have this traumatic life experience, again, when we deal with the person in intervention, we can't just deal with the individual. We can't just deal with the family. We can't just block out social media, and we can't just discount where you're from. We have to have a holistic view of how we can approach the whole person, the whole situation, and then create generational change from that capacity. Next slide. How do we interpret and respond to the world around us makes up who we are and contributes to our quality of life. This is as simple as input and output. There are some people who may say, well, music and TV and social media, it doesn't impact the way somebody behaves or performs. Well, if we look at it, you have those 4 inputs: media, games, music, and social. And you look at the output of what comes out of it. So if there's someone who's constantly watching TV, reality TV has moved to conflict, fighting, and retaliation, viral violence. So I think there's these shows like Bad Boys of LA and Bad Girls of Las Vegas and Love and Hip Hop. All of these shows at some point are going to come with a conflict narrative. You have to have the protagonist, but oftentimes you have the antagonist, the villain, and it's throwing drinks and fights just to get those likes. When we think about the gaming industry, the number one games that we see playing out today is first-person shooter games. So when we think mass shooting, I mean, GTA, Halo, Fortnite, these are mass shooting games. And right now, America has more mass shootings than we have days in the year. There's been a mass shooting almost every day this year. And so when you pause and you look at, okay, if people in the hundreds of thousands are playing mass shooting games, then what would be the output? Music. In the last 5 years, we've had more killings of musical hip hop artists than we had in the last 15. And again, it's the music where if the music is talking about one, drug overdose, suicide, celebratory death, we're talking about one artist in retaliation against another artist. In 2007, a game was released called Call of Duty Black Ops. And when we look at Call of Duty Black Ops, now we have constantly this word usage of, I got to get the ops, I got to get the ops. But it came from this gaming. Now it's influencing the music. And what you see is this battle against the ops, where we see more and more artists either being shot at or killed on an alarming rate. And then lastly, social media. Social media has seen more suicides, more drug overdoses. And again, we're watching more and more violence, whether it's violence from police officers or violence from other countries. It's just a constant rotation of tragic events that are played in your input. So what is the expected outcome? And so when we interpret the world, we have to respond. Go to the next slide, please. And this is kind of good because many times they have people who say, well, emotions are feelings, or feelings are emotion, but there's actually a difference. In 2017, the number one song in the country was Drake, In My Feelings. And when we think about what really triggers someone to be violent, they're typically in their feelings. If you look at what is violence, the psychology says that violence, um, the most common motivations for violence can be viewed as inappropriate attempts to handle emotions. Often, violence is a medium used by an individual to openly express their feelings, such as anger, frustration, sadness, and other times, violence can be manipulation. But let's pause and just look at if someone can't control their emotions or their feelings, if as a child they've been taught to throw temper tantrums whenever they don't get their way, if the parents has been conditioning to say, hey, if somebody hits you, you have to hit them back. If that's how you deal with your emotions, then your feelings that arise from it has to have an output. So what the trigger is and what the outcome is, again, it's those input versus output. And if you haven't learned a behavior on how to control it, then it's going to be out of control. Next slide. So when we think of those common situations that
Are you there, Patrick? It looks like we may have lost Patrick. We'll just give him a little bit time, see that he'll come back on. It looks like we're talking about gun violence. Yes, and social media. I tell you, social media, there's a lot out there, and you got to be careful what your input and your output is. Hopefully we'll get Patrick back in a minute. His internet may be having issues as well. I was having internet issues. Look like you holding it down over there, Ayo. How's your internet doing?
We getting going still strong, but just touching on some of the things that he was saying, like the statistics, I didn't even know. I actually didn't know this, and I can be honest that that's where the word op came from. Like that's where it originated from, and it's the video games our children are playing. I for one have never allowed my son to play GTA or any of those things. However, he does have social media. I have seen the influence on, watching YouTubers and things like that, and having to teach him how to differentiate between reality and special effects, things like that. But when it comes to gun violence, I grew up in the Bayview. I grew up a little bit all over San Francisco, but when we moved to the Bayview, that's when it had the biggest impact. I can say out of maybe 50 people that I grew up with, there are probably 10 males still surviving, and maybe 8 of those are in jail, unfortunately, and some type of charge for gun violence and or physical violence or something like that played a component into them being incarcerated and or losing their lives. Right
Absolutely. Looks
now,
like
oh, we
okay.
got you back. Hey, Patrick, you good?
hey, sorry about that. It's raining here in New Orleans, so you know our southern storms. It's not a hurricane, but we had like a power surge, so I apologize for
I understand. We'll go ahead
dipping
and
in
put
and
your
dipping
power
out.
back.
Okay, but yeah, we talked about the violence, and we go into the next thing. What are those triggers? And so, if we can go to the next slide, yeah, there we go. So those triggers. So when we talk about everybody has a button, like everybody has this button that if you press that button, it's going down, right? And so some of those buttons are rejection, betrayal, unjust treatment, challenging someone's belief, helplessness or loss of control, being excluded or ignored, disapproval or criticism, feeling unwanted or unneeded, feeling smothered or too needed, insecurity, and then loss of independence. Those are real buttons. And when those buttons are pressed, those emotions has a feeling in return. And so what you want to be able to be mindful of and question in communication is, how are you impacting someone's emotions? Not how you're touching their feelings, but how you're impacting their emotions. And so it's a learned conversation that we can just have. Like sometimes we ask people how are they doing today, but the question is how you're dealing with today. Next question, next slide, please. This is just some of the things that we identified, things that we've seen, and just gathering intelligence around, some patterns, the geotags, the affiliations. We can go to the next slide. And then just learning vocabulary and slangs, again, whether it's from Dracos to sticks, ops, slide, smoking. There's so many different ways that we have to look at this new, I don't want to say it's new, but we have to look at our digital community and study it in the same way that we look at our regular ecosystem and our environment. We can go to a local park and look at the kids that are either on a skateboard park, a basketball park, or going to the community center in a physical space. We have to also engage those kids who are into music, into TikTok performing, and also just maybe have some disruptive comment, some disruptive post that we can just address. And so I would love to open the discussion back with the crew just to see if you have any opinions or comments. But right now, again, if gun violence is the leading cause of death for youth under 18, kids as young as 8 years old are now on social media platforms. There's been an increase of social media activity of all youth age groups up to 17% since the pandemic. It's a very real thing. And so just as much as you can promote it for positive and all the songs and the trends doing the Beyonce, there's the little Beyonce dance. I don't know how to do it. I definitely don't know how to do the little wavy, right? That's not me. But just as those things can go viral, violence can go viral as well. And so we have to identify, intervene, and be those change agents, not only in a physical capacity, but in a digital space as well. So.
Wow, Patrick, I tell you, you mentioned the video games, and it makes me think back to where sometimes we're watching the news and 6-year-old, 8-year-old shot mom, shot dad. And it's like, wait a minute, how did the baby, you know what I mean? It's a lot of these guns have safeties and you got to really, there's a lot of force put into it when you pull in that trigger. It's like, wow, so awful that you can just pick up different behaviors off of TV, off of video games and all that good stuff. But nonetheless, what impacted you to advocate for this cause?
It's a dual sword. One, my life was impacted by gun violence. Myself, my brother was murdered. And because he was murdered in 1997, without any guidance or any real mentoring support, in New Orleans, we had a saying, get it how you live. And so my whole goal was, I wanted to kill the person who killed my brother, just being honest. And I would wind up getting in trouble legally, not for a murder, but for other violent charges. And I wound up serving 13 years and 9 months in the Department of Corrections. Meaning initially the judge offered me a 65-year prison sentence as a first offender. And I had that sentence reduced to 15 years, and I served 13 years and 9 months in Department of Corrections. And I'm excited now to be the first director of gun violence prevention for the mayor's office here in the city. But you look at those experiences on both sides of the experience, the professional and the person that's struggling to survive, and you use it as ways of preventive measures.
We have a great question here. It says, how do we get to the preventative work? It seems the violence preventative models are very reactive, which I was going to ask you also, like, what are your hopes and what do you want to achieve with the work that you're doing?
So that's a great question. And a lot of times people just want to just say, immediately snap the fingers, we need to do something right now. We just want to lock them up. And so we found that if it was about incarceration, America leads the world in incarceration. America should be the safest country in the world, and it's not. It's not about the guns. If we remove every gun from the country right now, we'll still be a violent city because we haven't been taught social emotional learning. So the most proactive thing that you can do is institute a social emotional learning component into your schools and your communities. We have to learn how to deal with. We just have to learn how the community has to be. Community has to learn how to be community. And in other words, when we say love your community or be at peace, we use these words, but it hasn't been taught or demonstrated. So the proactive model is to be able to teach people, one, how to coexist. When you look at the pattern of race relations and patterns of community relations, you're kind of just put in a space and expected to just live in that space. But there's really no formal coaching on how to coexist in whatever space that you're given. And so, great question. The follow-up question was, how do we create true safe spaces? Um, I'm actually launching a new campaign here in New Orleans next week called Community Walk Talks, in which you just go into your community and you walk and talk with as many neighbors and residents and businesses as possible. You know, growing up, we knew, like, if I got in trouble, the person across the street could give me a whipping. That's what we would say. Like, I'm gonna tell your mama. But now we've broken away from some of those real time community relations in community. And so a good way is to understand, who are your neighbors? What businesses do you have? How many churches are in your community? Who's the principal of the school in your direct environment? And it doesn't need to be the entire city, but as a community, you can adopt 6 blocks and say, you know what, these 6 blocks, this is our safe zone. There's a really good example in New York in the Harlem Children's Harlem Safe Zone. Jeffrey Canada started it many years ago. But in that Harlem Safe Zone, there's a school, there's businesses, there's churches, but there's no violent activity. The same way that we can set up drug-free zones around schools, we can have violent-free zones around community and really identify who your neighbors are, what's going on, who's coming in, who's going out. You know, here we just had our French Quarter, our Jazz Fest in New Orleans. I would say it was hundreds of thousands of tourists invaded the city, but guess what? We had not one shooting at the Jazz Fest. You know why? Because it was a safe zone. Guns wasn't allowed. Violent activity was, it was a high place of coexisting in this place, watching this music, but it was understood that violence won't be tolerated here. If we have that same type of mentality when we go to sporting events and entertainment events, well, we can have it where we live and where we reside. We should have a violent-free attitude, but again, you have to have people that is willing to collaborate and join with you, not just for the fun stuff, but when it's really putting it on the line. You just want to be safe and making sure that your kids coming home from school, walking home from the bus, that they can walk in your neighborhood and know that, hey, they're safe.
So I heard you mentioning about the metaverse. How do you feel that we can utilize the AI and automation to help us curb the gun violence? How could we implement utilizing the metaverse and all these things, the AI included? How can we implement those things in helping us to solve this horrible pandemic? Horrible.
It's a good question as well. The data that's collected, and I work with Facebook and with Meta too on trying to get some of this information. Facebook has about 4 billion users on their streaming platforms. They collect large amounts of data. The information that you have creates an algorithm where they can predict almost what you want before you even ask for it. And if there's a predictability around behavior, then it can be prevented. We can use the data and the information to try to get a predictive strategy on where the target areas are, where the hotspot areas, what are we identifying, what can we see? And once we know that there's some smoke in that area, then we can put out those fires. But we have to be proactive and acknowledge, one, that these digital places exist. There's some people who feel like, oh, it's just innocent. Social media, people are pretending it's nothing. No, the same way we can monitor to see if someone's going to do a terrorist attack on a building, we can identify if someone is trying to engage in harmful behavior to the community, predict that behavior, and then also intervene before it takes place.
That's amazing. So I want to go back to something that you said about the quadrant of trauma. So it kind of compares to like the food pyramid of trauma, right? So you break it down in these sections, right? And what do you think would be a really great way to start to break down those chains of command, or, contributing factors to leading up to, kids getting access to guns and all these things? Of course, model behavior, community, the area you're growing up in, and things like that are contributing factors. How can we get in there and help to break down these chains?
One, first, we have to acknowledge that this trauma is real and it exists. And then again, not just as individual, but as a quadrant. We really have to look at, again, the individual, the family, the social, and also the environment. Y'all know, God.
Don't say it, Patrick.
All right, here we go. All right, back in it. Well, I'm just saying, it's just, you don't want to set trip, say the wrong thing, but it's a matter of being able to acknowledge it. And we can't just focus on the kids. We have to have a holistic approach. The family has to be brought up. The church has to be brought in. The school has to be a part of the discussion. Like, it has to really be a full effort. A team win. I watch like these NBA games, and everybody's talking about, how important the fans are to the attitude of the players when they're in these games. Well, what's the attitude of the community when we see our kids competing to survive? Like, we have to be their support. We have to be able to cheer them on, for success, not just for sport. And so I am just a big proponent of just getting back out to old neighborhood engagement and just knowing who's who in your community.
So, I mean, I don't know if it's different out there. I know it's different out there because I watch First 48, right? Nonetheless, I tell you, you're saying, okay, get back out there in the community. But when the community is looking at someone come into their area that's kind of iffy, they don't want to talk to you. So how can you break that down to make them believe and know that you are safe? Because they swear you're working with the police. They're like, no, this is an informant. I ain't messing with them. I'm not going to say anything to them because I know they're an informant because they're positive. You can't be positive and just step into the hood with positivity. So how can you break that down to get to tap into them?
It's that ally building. That's why I said not just residents, but the church, the barbershop, the beauty salon, the corner store. Like, when you get to bring those allies and walking together, like, I'm not just gonna come to San Francisco and just talk to someone and just run up on one of the streets or something like that and be like, hey, put the guns down. Like, no, that's not. But I'm gonna try to find out who are some influential people in that community, who are some people who are respected. I started a program here called Barbers and Beauticians Collective Fellowship, where we train barbers and beauticians how to be conflict and mediators and peace ambassadors, because they're invested. Their business is there. They want to sustain their business, but also they're well respected. And so I want to highlight that there are some people in the community, and it's not just people who have done criminal behavior, but there's some people who are just so respected in the community to where if they call for a coalition, then people are going to listen. If they call for, walking and talking, people will listen. And we have to just have those community conversations. I think in New Orleans, we'll say we have the come to Jesus moment. And so We have to just have those real conversations. And whether it's online or in person, we have to have the conversations about how we're going to coexist as a community.
I agree. Like our founder always says, connect before you correct. Getting out there and actually having conversations with the kids before you just sit there and tell them, y'all need to do this. When they've never had anybody show them any different. You know, it's like grind, dog eat dog, crab in the barrels, but nobody's going in and actually having a conversation with these kids to say, why are you so angry? What's triggering for you? Like going back to that, I really love that analogy about the quadrant of trauma. I love that analogy because it breaks down all of these contributing factors and you can really get to know the inside of the young people. You know what I mean? Getting in their
Well,
mind.
just if you can, just like use it for yourself. Like just say, hey yo, as a person, think about your family, who your social is, and then you from the Bay. So like no, and the guy I see he had a question before. I just wanted to acknowledge that was one of the things I think to get a license, a driver's license, you have to. Well, here you have to go through like this 7-hour course. You have to take these training courses on how to drive to get a driver's license. We have to do a real good job on not just giving someone a gun, but also the education around the emotions and feelings that you may have once you have a weapon of destruction in your possession. Because again, it's not just guns; it's knives, and again, domestic violence went up 200% during the pandemic. Again, if you take away the instrument, we'll still be a violent society. We have to learn that social emotional learning on how to coexist, get out your feelings, turn off the Drake, right? Right? And really just come back to who we are as a people and what kind of people do we want to produce in the future.
Wow, that was good. We have a good point here. Since so many people are in love with guns, how do we create real training for youth in our community?
Again, the same. So New Orleans is big on music and sports. I'm talking about every school has a band, um, and you learn how to be disciplined, how to march, how to parade, and in sports, you learn how to be disciplined and not break the rules in sport. When are we going to do that for life skills, right? And teach people like there are rules and conditions and ways that you can live. Um, just in the same way you can play a game and not want to destroy someone after the game. You shouldn't walk away wanting to destroy uh, someone as well. Again, it's and we watch that and I think that's a good example too when I say in the feelings when we watch these athletes and they have a fight and the collateral consequence. Ja Morant recently was online and he was waving a gun and all of the collateral consequence that came from that. Like there are things that has to be part of the education and aggressiveness and attitude and gangster imagery. I don't know why our culture has to be the one that carries all of the negativity to represent the mafia and the hood and just like we can be celebrated for our creativity. We can be celebrated for our ideas, but we don't have to always be associated with the ones that's about that life, right? About that life meaning that we live in, we traveling, and we coexisting as a peaceful people.
Well, us Black folks, we like to stand apart from everyone else, and we like to be the best at everything that we do, right? Good or bad. Not promoting bad, because for us, for our lives to be taken away from us due to incarceration, and this month is Mental Health Month, so we just had trauma on a conversation about trauma and just mental health, and there was something that you had said that really, really, really was very important to get out of your emotions, because as we know, When these people lose their jobs, when they get upset with their bosses, when something goes wrong at school, I mean, depending on what that trigger is, it sends them off into a spiral. So
Quick.
you have to be cautious, and as I seen in the comments, how you have to tiptoe around on eggshells because you just don't know who you're dealing with. So, what type of advice would you give to the community that has no choice but to be in the middle of all the chaos that's going on? What type of advice can you give an individual to make sure that they don't be part of the statistics in a negative way?
So one, it's get out your feelings and get into your focus, um, and really figuring what's that thing that's pressing. Um, we have to have a unified feeling and emotion of the kind of environment that we want to live and how we want to live. Beyonce is going on tour, and I'm pretty sure when she starts singing a song, the whole arena is going to sing that same song. They're going to join in unison, people they never met, people they don't even know, but they're going to have a feeling of expression based on the emotions that they get from that song and join in. And just as we can move the masses through music, we can move the masses through a movement of community peace. Like we can all align on the idea. We can have an idea that, you know what, this aligns with my beliefs. This aligns with your belief. It covers all religions. It covers whether you eat pork or not. Like we want to make sure that our kids are safe. There's a saying, this African proverb. Are y'all still there? Yeah. African proverb that says Masawi tribe, and they say they would greet each other and say, "Well, how are the children?" And the response was, "All the children are well." And so, if it was a problem in the tribe, all the children wasn't well. So we have to look at our tribe as a tribe in community. If we say, "How are the children?" and we can't say all the children are well, then we have work to do.
Yes, we have a question there. How much have the mayor invested in the project for the long term?
Oh, that's a great question. We are making some changes. There are ARPA funds. If you look at across the country, the Biden administration just put out over $300 billion towards CVI, community violence intervention programs. I think it's good to note in 1994, the Dickey Amendment didn't allow for any federal legislation of gun violence research. And it wasn't until 2021 that there was any funding allotted. So for over 25 years, there was no federal legislation or research on gun violence. So people don't know what's going on and why it's happening. There's no pre-Katrina report. There's no post-Katrina report. And really, it doesn't matter what city or state you're in, because of that Dickey Amendment, there's not a lot of information for the social causations of gun violence in the community. We are now just being able to study that. And as more study comes, more funding is going to be allotted. Again, this is a new program, but we need the data to show what's working, what's not working, and again, what's happening, why it's happening, and how we can change those behaviors. So right now, as we're starting with minimal budget, we're looking to increase those funds with more federal funding and research to show what's effective versus what's not working.
So when you came out here and you said you were doing some work with the police department, what were you doing with them? Are you trying to get the organization and your work to come out here, to transfer out here as well?
Well, when we look at the digital community, we have to, it's not just, we can't exclude police, we can't exclude community, we can't exclude the school system, we can't exclude faith-based organizations. This is a pandemic. This is a real serious problem. Gun violence spreads like a disease, and we have to all come all hands on deck as far as to stop the spread of violence. It's not, again, for just arrest and incarceration. I'm for programs, not prisons, but we have to identify who's at risk, who are the ones that's threatening their lives, being able to intervene with those individuals, change those behaviors. But again, at the beginning of the day, end of the day, how can we coexist as a community? And we have to, again, how many neighbors do you know? Can you name 10 neighbors on your street? Do you have their phone number? Do you know who owns the barbershop? Who owns the drugstore? Like, who's the principal of the school? Not the ones your kid goes to, but the one that's closest to your community. You know, do you know your the people at the post office? Like that, there's ways that we can come back into community and coexist.
Well, it used to be like that growing up in the Bayview district. There were, you couldn't, like you said, growing up, you get in trouble down this street, you're going to have to answer to everybody on your way home. And by the time you get home, your parents already know it. Our communities have been uprooted and gentrified and given the minimal for their beautiful properties, and they're moved out the way. So no, not in the Bayview district. You can't walk down the street and say, hey, so-and-so, hey, so-and-so. Now it's more so, I remember so-and-so used to live there. Oh, what family is there now? There's mom and pop stores no longer there. The community in the village has been separated. It's been segregated. Everybody's every which way. So actually being able to walk down the street and getting to know your neighbors now, they're very closed off because they're not the foundation that built that community. So those people that are moving in now, their doors are shut because yeah, you got that great property at a low cost, but you're not trying to build up the community, which is unfortunate.
And again, it was going back to the proactive work. If there was some car break-ins on the block, let's say they broke in like 10 cars on the block, people are going to be outside and in the uproar. What's going on? What's happening? You know, we have to do something. And then you'll meet people in tragedy, right? In the same way, let's be proactive with our car break-ins, knocking on doors, bringing peace offerings and say, hey, I live at 2429. I have 2 sons. I just want you to be aware of, and really in your block, it doesn't have to, you don't have to take the large pull, because sometimes people feel like, I want to get started, I want to do something, but I can't do the whole New Orleans. No, you can do your street. And then your street can galvanize and work its way around the block. And then after you work your way around the block, you can get some momentum around these areas. Again, make it a safe zone, a peace zone. Just like they'll put up signs that say, slow down, kids live in this area, deaf child area, all right, violence-free area. You can put up signs to let people know. I know we used to play basketball in the middle of the street. And so cars started going around our street because they knew this was the street that the kids played basketball on. So I'm just hopeful that if nothing else from this conversation is going to motivate somebody to say, hey, I'm going to know 3 more neighbors tomorrow, and we can figure out, just us 3 neighbors, how we can find 3 more neighbors. And then expand that as well on your digital platform. Who are you at peace with on your social media platform? Or are you someone that's just looking for, oh, they beefing over here, they beefing over there? It's just, no, I mean, inputs and outputs. And if we put peace in, we can most certainly guarantee peace is going to come out. But if all we're putting in is conflict and problems, then that's the expected outcome.
Well, oftentimes when you're living in the undeserved community, a lot of the people are poor, right? And so they don't have the resources that's needed for them to feel accepted. So when you're dealing with people in this type of community, one bad apple will destroy the whole vine. It's like you want to find people that are like-minded and positive if you're going to, put your positivity on them. Because there's nothing like interacting with a negative person when you're trying to be positive. It just kind of like dampens the spirit. So it seems a bit difficult when you have a neighborhood or a block, and there may be 5 neighbors that want to go for something positive, and then you got that one house where she got the bad kids that's breaking in the cars and nobody wants to say anything to them because they know it's them kids over there. So it's kind of like, I don't know how it would be a difficult approach, but I love that recommendation. Certainly. It's just sometimes it gets a bit difficult when you don't want to approach that one house.
But challenges build champions. So me personally, I am the positive. I am the ray of light. So my hopes is that my light will attract those who may have had a bad day, whatever. But if you consistently are up in their faces, you consistently drilling that, you consistently putting those posters up, and you're brightening the brightening horizon in the community, then one way or another, it's going to make an impact. Even if it's one person, I always go by the arc. A random act of kindness a day goes a long way. One kind gesture can make a grand impression in someone's life. You never know how much that little can go for somebody. Just a smile, sharing a smile. Hey, how you doing today? Like Patrick said, in hopes that this broadcast can have somebody say, you know what, I was inspired. Let me go and meet my neighbors. Instead of going to complain and calling the police and saying, hey, they're rowdy over there. And, we don't know where there's disruption. We don't know. But you're not going to go check on that family. We used to have that. We used to have that to where you would say, hey, I saw your son down there acting up. He's cutting up. And they would be not even to say force, but they will put an action to it and say, hey, we're going to nip this in the bud right here. But we've lost that sense of the village. We've lost that sense of the tribe and community. And it is hard. It is a challenge. But by just even this broadcast alone may get us a little step further to actually rebuilding it with the people who are there now. Not to say that, we can't build these bridges with the people who are in our old communities, but they have to be open. And you got to be in their face. Hey, we here. We're not going anywhere. And I wholeheartedly believe in the mission of both sides of the conversation and the act and the actions that have led, not just by the words, but the actions that led up to all of these things. If not even just this organization, we're going to bridge those gaps with every other organization. We're going to bridge those gaps with everybody else, and everything that we're doing within the community. That's going to get the base. It's not going to be easy. You're not an easy win. It's not going to be easy, but it's about being diligent and putting the work in.
You're so right. I was in San Francisco and I saw, everybody with a Warriors shirt on. Like, you couldn't say nothing about Golden State. If you was in Chinatown, you couldn't say nothing about Golden State. And it was just like, we can rally around a sports team, right? So it shows, and whether it was the shooter, whether it was the mayor, whether it was someone else, they all had their Golden State shirt on. We just have to find the cause to unify behind. We have to, the main thing though too is we have to just be honest and tell the truth. Racism is real. White supremacy has an effect. People are still hurting, and there are traumatic effects that are still lingering from that post-slavery era. And we can't just say that we disappeared and we live in these areas and we live in these places by accident. There were some collateral consequences that came out of what impacted the community because of slavery. We have to be honest about that, and we have to address it, but then also find ways that we can redress and take control of our community. In the same way that we can identify Chinatown. In Chinatown, they have language all on the signs, and they have all kind of shops within where they work together, they shop together, they have their community. And it's no matter what city you go to, there's an Asian market somewhere that they say, okay, this is where you want us to be, this is where you're putting us, we're going to survive and thrive as a community, no matter what city you put us in. We have to have the come to Jesus moment where we can just, support one another, support our businesses, support our kids who are in trouble, support not just the ones that are winning, but the ones that may have lost their way, and say, hey, we're going to wrap our arms around you, and we're going to make sure that you're not forgotten. But the other thing is that let's not just talk about it. Like, let's get some actions. People can complain online all day long, but if you can't say, you know what, Patrick, I tried. I talked to three neighbors. They didn't want to talk to me. I respect that more than you just saying, oh, it's not going to work. So the challenge would be, you know what, I went out, I tried to talk to them, and you'll find that, man, those kids, they just want some love. I actually went to what I did personally. I saw some kids playing basketball. I went to Walmart. I got some 10K, some Gatorades. There's a Chick-fil-A across from there. I just got some nuggets. And I just pulled up and I just said, hey, man, how y'all doing? I just gave them some food and something to drink. And it was just in that moment, we created relationships. I asked, hey, any of you guys looking for jobs for the summer? I got some jobs if you're interested. And it's just building that rapport, that respect. It doesn't cost a lot, right? But it costs more if we let the streets take our kids instead of trying to invest in them. That 10K, that Gatorade and that Chick-fil-A nuggets, it meant nothing, to the overall consequence if one of these kids go out and robs, shoots, and kills somebody, and knowing that I passed them and I didn't try to do anything to intervene, that's on me. And so I just feel we all have a passion. We all have the ability to speak, and we can reach somebody. We just have to try.
Absolutely. Wow, that was very, very powerful. I tell you, this Educational Thursday has been very, very informative. And it's encouraging. It's encouraging that there is a better way. Before we go, Ayo, do you have any more questions from the community or that you'd like to ask Patrick before? I know it's kind of late out there in New Orleans.
Right. Well, I keep going back. It keeps replaying in my head the quadrant.
Yes.
It keeps replaying in my head. Like, how can we build some type of organization around that and start to get that knowledge out there that other people will actually be able to implement that when they are faced with challenges, like to actually utilize it as a tool before reacting. Let's be proactive before reacting. How do you think that we could organize that for people, just to get that education out there for people as a tool?
So I think that, in the late 90s, there was, the early 90s, there was a campaign around safe sex. And so there was the discussion was bringing, condoms and talking about sex in schools. And so at first people were like, oh, that's taboo. You don't talk about sex in schools. But what it did was it decreased sexually transmitted disease among teens and reduced the number of teen pregnancies. But it was a mandatory curriculum in the school that you had to take sex ed. We have to have a mandatory curriculum around emotional ed, right? Your emotions and how you deal with it and what's going on. And then also, you can have a great educational system in a school, but if the child returns back to a toxic home environment, where is the education on that as well? So we have to be able to, again, have community be community. We have to have education on social emotional learning. And then the other piece that's missing is safe spaces. Kids who are getting in trouble, sometimes the home is a problem, sometimes school is a problem. For adults who are incarcerated, there's a transitional work facility that you can go to as you're being released from prison. You can go to the halfway house, get a job, get yourself together, and then move forward. If we create spaces like that for youth, to where, hey, this is a transitional house for you that's designed for you to learn financial literacy, learn how the money's managed, learn how to live on your own without the guidance of your parents. But it's a healthy environment. You get mental health support, but you can also get employability skills, get a job, learn how to budget, move in that way. The same way that you have that transitional house for people who are incarcerated, there should exist a transitional house for youth in that transition period so that they don't end up in adult facilities. Sometimes home isn't the safest place, right? Sometimes living with a grandmother isn't the safest answer. But where is the facility, a safe space that you can go to make that transition? And so I just it's again, the passion of the work is about the person, about the purpose, not the person. Don't get caught up in the person of who I am, but the purpose of the work is we need to have holistic, safe communities. We need to learn how to coexist. And I'm just trying to do my part here in New Orleans, and I welcome anyone that wants to join me. You know, whether it's in San Francisco, whether it's in Oakland, whether it's in California, I would love to come and talk, be a part of the conversation. And, you know, even if it's online through these platforms, both sides of the conversation, we have to coexist.
And we have some questions here. Well, actually, statements. It says we have to pay the people to heal the people, and
Correct.
pay for mental health services. Finding ways that we can actually start with the youth and actually healing them through mental health. You know, raising the awareness that our children suffer from mental health issues as well. Although they don't have the outlet or the vocabulary to express it sometimes because they don't have a safe space, excuse me, but making that safe space and, shining the light that, hey, they're dealing with traumas and triggers too. And if we're able to heal them, of course, we need to try to get through the parents, child, what have you. But if we build those safe spaces for children to feel comfortable to express themselves about the mental anguish, about those, manic depressive moments that they go through, with being exposed to too much too soon, with model behavior.
Right.
All of these things are contributing factors, and us making sure that, like you said, pay the people to heal the people. Incentives are big to get people to actually come out and be active in doing things. So finding funding to be able to pay for these things to really start to make a change.
And just to be aware, there is funding, and I'll submit it to you. So maybe in a future conversation to follow up that you can have. It's called CVI funding, Community Violence Intervention Funding. So if anyone's really interested in getting federal funding, it's over $300 billion has been allotted to do community violence intervention work. So there's money available. There's outcomes-based financing models that you can talk to about Blue Cross Blue Shield, Humana, healthcare providers that can provide funding as well. Maybe that's a whole different conversation just to talk about funding streams for nonprofits or people looking to do community work. But there definitely is money available. We just have to have these conversations to figure out how do we get access to it.
Definitely. So we want to ask you, Patrick, if you could give a quick shout out or recognition to anyone while you're on the both sides of the conversation platform. This has been really a treat for us tonight.
I just want to give out one to the city of New Orleans, the mayor, for being in this position. And then also to you as a host for having me on, and for the community that cares. This is not, and I wish I could have a more exciting topic to talk about, right? But it's like I feel like the doctor that used to come on to talk about COVID and how dangerous COVID was and how it's going to impact. But the reality of it is that no, this is a serious conversation. There is another pandemic that's hitting our communities, and if we're not aware of how to get in front of it, if we're not talking of how we can stop this spread, it's going to continue to destroy, many lives. So I am hopeful that we can continue the conversation and have more breakouts. I'm hoping that people can look at the quad not only for themselves, but talk about a quad with their family and ask, mom, give me your quad. What was you as an individual? What's your family? What was your social? What was your environment? Learning from one another. Talk to your friends, and really stop this spread of violence, whether it's in person or digital. And so, again, I'm here as a resource. I look forward to more conversations, and thank you for having me. Who that?
We'll definitely have to have you back on so you can elaborate on all the other great things that you have going on. So we'll see you on one of our other shows, the Hidden Gem Show, our Sunday Conversation or something. We'll definitely have to have you back on.
And if y'all ever in New Orleans, come holler at your boy. I know some good restaurants.
I've never been, so I might have to take you up on that.
All right, come on. Come on.
Definitely. Ayo, anything you'd like to leave with our community tonight on this Educational Thursday before we close?
Man, it was a heavy topic, and it's a topic that is very close to me. So finding the way to educate our people on the challenges and really building up our communities again so we can get out there and be proactive before we have these reactive people is very important. So like Patrick said, we can all do our part. Get out there and meet some of your neighbors, start building the community back up that we're in, that you guys are living in, that we're all living in. And that will help to start to bridge the gaps. We won't let anybody slip through the crack, not here at both sides of the conversation. And it's very, very important that we uplift each other. We don't feed into the drama. And we always try to find how to turn a negative energy into a positive doing. A smile goes a long way. Small, kind gestures make grand impressions. You never know what somebody's going through. So don't take it personal. And don't be so quick to judge or be defensive with people.
Ooh, Ayo, you speak deep, and you gave me chills when you said that, because that is so important. Because we know, community, just like Patrick Young, all the way from New Orleans, came to share with us, there's common situations where, yes, there's triggers that really intensify your emotions. Is rejection one of your triggers? Betrayal, unjust treatment, challenged beliefs, helplessness, or a loss of control? Being excluded or ignored, is that one of your triggers? Do you dislike being criticized or feeling unwanted or unneeded? Are you insecure? Is there a loss of your independence? Patrick has given us such an amazing show tonight and given us some tools. What are your traumas? This is Mental Health Month. What are your traumas? What drives you to do the things that you are doing? Before snapping pictures, what are you promoting, community? Why are you taking these pictures? Are you leaving positive memories with these pictures? Before posting on your social media or the internet, on the gram, TikTok, Facebook, did you know that the internet is the World Wide Web? Someone is watching you, community. This is permanent information. What music are you listening to? What video games are you playing? As Patrick stated, input versus output. Have you learned your behavior? Do you know your behavior and your triggers? We have to change the narrative, community. Put forth action to rebuilding our village. At both sides of the conversation, we put forth that action. We care about the community. We interact with everyone. We're out in the community, and we have our Educational Thursdays at both sides of the conversation. We have our Sunday conversations, and we also have our Hidden Gems Tuesday. Now, keep in mind, community, this Sunday is Mother's Day. So to all the mothers out there, stay strong and know that your children do appreciate you. They give us a hard time sometimes, but they do appreciate you. So hats off to all you beautiful mothers out there in raising those babies to be successful, prosperous, and healthy. Our next live show will be Hidden Gems on Tuesday, and we look forward to seeing you at 7 p.m. Have a great night, community, and thank you for spending your time with us on this Educational Thursday. Good night.